I have always believed that hard work is the great equalizer. It's a naive sentiment, perhaps, but it was the only philosophy that made sense to me growing up in a family where merit was often overshadowed by blind favoritism. For 18 years, I operated under the assumption that if I simply put my head down, studied harder than everyone else, and overcame the agonizing obstacles life threw my way, I would eventually be rewarded. I didn't ask for much, I just wanted a fair shot. But my cousin, Chloe, and her fiercely enabling parents, Aunt Susan and Uncle Greg, operated under a completely different set of rules. To them, the world was a buffet meant to be grazed upon without consequence, and I was merely the help, existing only to provide contrast to Chloe's brilliance. Chloe and I are exactly the same age, born just 3 weeks apart. From the moment we could walk, we were constantly compared, though the yardsticks were wildly different. If I spent 3 weeks meticulously building a science fair project on renewable energy and won first place, Aunt Susan would proudly announce that Chloe had painted a slightly lopsided birdhouse and that her creative genius was simply not appreciated by the rigid public school system. Chloe was lazy, not just mildly procrastinating, but deeply, intrinsically averse to any form of sustained effort. She coasted through high school on a potent combination of charm, manipulated extensions, and the relentless bulldozing of her parents, who would scream at any teacher who dared give their precious daughter anything less than a B+. Meanwhile, I was fighting a war on two fronts. Not only was I juggling a brutal schedule of AP classes, captaining the debate team, and volunteering at the local hospital, but I was also dealing with the lingering shadow of my childhood. When I was 10 years old, I was diagnosed with a highly aggressive, incredibly rare form of pediatric osteosarcoma, bone cancer, in my right femur. The sheer terror of that diagnosis is something that still wakes me up in cold sweats. While other kids were learning to ride bikes and navigating the awkwardness of middle school, I was living in sterile hospital rooms, nauseous from relentless rounds of chemotherapy, and facing the very real possibility of losing my leg, or worse, my life. The climax of that nightmare was a marathon 14-hour limb salvage surgery. It was an experimental procedure at the time, performed by a brilliant but terrifyingly serious orthopedic oncologist named Dr. Eris Thorne. He didn't just remove the tumor. He essentially reconstructed my leg using a custom-machined titanium endoprosthesis that had to be periodically lengthened as I grew, requiring multiple follow-up surgeries over the next 6 years. The physical pain was indescribable. I had to relearn how to walk 3 separate times. My leg is now mapped with a jagged, 12-inch scar that looks like a lightning bolt, a permanent, physical testament to the absolute hell I survived. When it came time to write my college admissions essays, particularly my personal statement for the Ivy League university that had been my dream school since I was a little girl, I knew exactly what I had to write about. I didn't want a pity party. I wanted to write about resilience. I wanted to write about the profound, deeply intimate realization of my own mortality at age 10, and how the cold, hard titanium fused to my bone had literally and metaphorically become the foundation upon which I built my academic drive. I spent 4 months writing that essay. I drafted, deleted, cried, and rewrote. It was the most difficult thing I had ever put to paper. I poured my soul into a Google document, detailing the specific, agonizing smell of the antiseptic in the pediatric oncology ward, the exact model of the titanium implant, the Stryker modular universal tumor and revision system, and a deeply personal conversation I had with Dr. Thorne in the recovery room when he told me, "You have a metal spine in your leg now, kid. Make sure your character matches it." That essay was a piece of my raw, beating heart, translated into exactly 648 words. The theft happened during our family's annual Thanksgiving gathering, hosted at our house. The house was a chaotic symphony of shouting relatives, clinking silverware, and the heavy smell of roasted turkey and stuffing. I had retreated to my bedroom upstairs to escape the sensory overload and was doing some final proofreading on my laptop. The essay was perfect. It was ready. I was just about to close the document when my mother yelled from the bottom of the stairs, frantic because the gravy had broken, and she needed my help immediately to whisk it back together. I left my laptop open on my desk. It was a fatal mistake. I was downstairs in the kitchen for maybe 20 minutes, desperately trying to salvage my mother's culinary disaster. When I finally trudged back upstairs, wiping flour on my apron, my bedroom door was slightly more ajar than I had left it. I walked in to find Chloe casually lounging on my bed, scrolling through her phone. "What are you doing in here?" I asked, a sudden prickle of unease washing over me. "Just needed to escape my mom's voice," Chloe said smoothly, not looking up from her screen. "She's been lecturing me about college apps all morning. It's so annoying. Like I'll get in somewhere, it's not that deep." I walked over to my desk. My laptop screen had gone to sleep. I tapped the spacebar and it flared to life. The Google Doc was exactly where I left it. Nothing seemed out of place. I dismissed the paranoia, assuming she had just wandered in to hide. I closed the laptop, kicked her out of my room, and went back downstairs to survive the rest of the holiday. Months passed. The grueling waiting period of senior year set in. I submitted my application, polishing every single aspect of my portfolio until it shone. My GPA was a flawless 4.0 unweighted. My SAT score was a 1580. My extracurriculars were stacked, but at the highly selective Ivy League level, everyone has those stats. The essay is the tipping point. The essay is what makes you human to a committee reading thousands of identical files. I banked my entire future on the vulnerability of those 648 words. Ivy Day arrived in late March. It's a day etched into the psyche of every high-achieving high school senior in the world. The portal updates were scheduled for 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely type in my password. I clicked on the status update for my dream university. The screen loaded. "Dear applicant, we are writing to inform you that we have placed you on the waitlist for the incoming freshman class." Waitlisted. The word felt like a physical blow to the chest. It wasn't a rejection, but it certainly wasn't an acceptance. It was a suffocating purgatory. I sat in my dark room, staring at the glowing screen, feeling a cold numbness spread through my veins. I had given them everything. I had bled onto the page, and it wasn't enough. An hour later, my phone buzzed. It was a text in the massive family group chat from Aunt Susan. "We have an Ivy League scholar in the family. CHLOE got in. Full acceptance. We are crying tears of joy." I stared at the text. My brain short-circuited. Chloe, who had a 3.4 GPA and whose only extracurricular activity was casually managing the school's non-existent French club. Chloe, who didn't even take the SAT because the school was test optional. Chloe got into my dream school. The family dinner the following weekend was a psychological torture chamber designed specifically for me. Aunt Susan had booked a massive table at an overpriced Italian restaurant to celebrate her little genius. My parents, to their credit, looked uncomfortable, offering me sympathetic glances, but they were too passive to ever stand up to Susan's overwhelming personality. "We always knew she had it in her," Uncle Greg boomed, raising a glass of expensive Barolo. "She just needed the right environment to let her light shine." And clearly, the admissions committee saw that raw, untapped potential. "Oh, absolutely," Aunt Susan chimed in, her eyes gleaming with a malicious sort of triumph as she looked directly across the table at me. "You know, grades aren't everything. Some kids just focus on being little robots, memorizing textbooks and stressing themselves out over AP classes. But elite universities, they want real people. They want soul. They want a story." And Chloe's essay? Oh, her essay was a masterpiece. It brought the admissions officer to tears. They actually wrote a handwritten note on her acceptance letter about how deeply moved they were by her profound struggle and resilience. I froze. My fork clattered against my plate. "Her essay?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What did you write about, Chloe?" Chloe looked down at her pasta, suddenly very interested in her manicured nails. "Just, you know, overcoming obstacles, finding inner strength. It was really personal. I'd rather not talk about it." "Nonsense," Aunt Susan squawked. She wrote about dealing with a chronic, invisible illness. How she suffered in silence for years but used the pain to forge a stronger character. It was brilliant. She didn't want to make a big deal out of it, so brave. A cold, terrifying clarity washed over me. The Thanksgiving dinner. The open laptop, the invisible illness, the profound struggle. I didn't say another word for the rest of the dinner. I went home, walked straight up to my room, locked the door, and opened my laptop. I didn't just suspect it, I knew. But I needed proof. I am a meticulous person. I leave digital footprints everywhere, and I know how to track them. I opened the Google Doc containing my essay. I clicked on File and then Version History. I scrolled down to the date of Thanksgiving. There it was. At exactly 2:14 p.m., while I was downstairs whisking gravy, the document had been accessed. But the smoking gun wasn't in the version history. I navigated to my Google account settings, delving deep into the security and activity logs. I pulled up the IP address access logs for my Google Drive for that specific day. There was my laptop's local IP. And there, sandwiched right in the middle of the timeframe, was a share action. The document had been emailed as a PDF attachment. I checked my sent folder. Nothing. But then I checked the trash folder. There it was. A deleted email, sent from my account to Chloe's personal email address, with the subject line, Essay. Attached was my exact essay. She had emailed it to herself, deleted the email from my sent folder, and emptied the immediate trash. But she was too technologically illiterate to realize that Google retains deep server logs, and permanently deleted items can be traced if you know where to look. I sat back in my chair, the blue light of the screen illuminating my face, the sheer audacity of it, the sociopathic entitlement. She hadn't just stolen my work, she had stolen my trauma. She had stolen the darkest, most painful years of my life, the agonizing surgeries, the fear of death, and paraded it around as her own invisible illness, to bypass the hard work she was too lazy to do. And she used it to steal my spot at my dream school. Anger doesn't adequately describe what I felt. It was a cold, glacial fury. It was a calculating, absolute resolve to utterly destroy her. I didn't yell. I didn't confront her. I didn't run to my parents or Aunt Susan. That would just result in gaslighting. Susan would claim I was jealous, that Chloe's essay was different, that I was having a mental breakdown. No. I needed to execute an absolute, unrecoverable, tactical nuclear strike. The next morning, I began building the portfolio. First, I needed to prove ownership of the intellectual property. I took meticulously detailed, time-stamped screenshots of my Google Doc version history, showing the essay's evolution over 4 months, the deleted paragraphs, the structural changes, the comments I left for myself. I exported the raw access logs showing the IP address of my computer and the specific timestamp when the file was illicitly emailed to Chloe's account. Second, I needed to prove the factual basis of the essay, which was the ultimate trap Chloe had blindly walked into. My essay wasn't full of vague metaphors, it was clinically precise. I drove to the hospital's medical records department. I requested heavily certified copies of my childhood surgical records. I got the operative report from my 14-hour limb salvage surgery, signed by Dr. Eris Thorne. I highlighted the exact make and model of the titanium implant, the Stryker modular universal tumor and revision system, the exact phrase I had used in paragraph 3 of my essay. I took high-resolution, time-stamped photographs of the 12-inch lightning bolt scar on my right femur. I even reached out to Dr. Thorne's office. He remembered me perfectly. When I explained the situation to him on the phone, the usually stoic surgeon was audibly disgusted. He wrote a signed, notarized letter on official hospital letterhead, verifying my medical history, confirming the specific quotes I used in the essay were from a conversation we had, and stating unequivocally that it was medically impossible for my cousin to have experienced this condition. I spent 3 weeks compiling this evidence. I printed it all out on heavy stock paper. I organized it into a thick, intimidating leather binder with tabbed dividers. Tab A, the stolen document, IP logs, timestamp drafts, email traces. Tab B, the medical reality, certified surgical records, X-rays, scans. Tab C, the corroboration, Dr. Thorne's notarized affidavit, photographic evidence. Tab D, a polite, formal cover letter detailing the exact timeline of the theft and a formal accusation of severe academic fraud. I didn't just mail it. I sent it via FedEx Priority Overnight, signature required, addressed directly to the Dean of Admissions and the head of the university's Academic Integrity Board. I also CC'd the digital copies to their direct, private email addresses, which I had scoured the university faculty directory to find. Then, I waited. The spring turned into summer. The waitlist at the Ivy League school remained agonizingly static. Chloe, meanwhile, was living her best life. Her Instagram was a relentless barrage of university merchandise, campus tour, and obnoxious captions about manifesting your dreams and hard work paying off. Aunt Susan bought a massive bumper sticker for her SUV that read, "Proud parent of an Ivy League scholar." Every family gathering was a fresh wave of psychological warfare, with Susan loudly lamenting my unfortunate situation and suggesting I look into community college to find my footing. I smiled politely. I ate my potato salad. I said nothing. Late August arrived. It was time for freshman orientation at the university. It's a massive, highly publicized event. The entire incoming freshman class, over 2,000 students, gathers in the university's historic main auditorium for the dean's welcoming address. Chloe had been posting about it all morning. Pictures of her outfit, pictures of the auditorium, pictures of her sitting in the third row, practically vibrating with unearned triumph. I was sitting on my bed at home, staring at my phone. It was 10 a.m. The orientation ceremony had started. At 10:45 a.m., my phone rang. It was an unknown number with an out-of-state area code, the area code of the university. I took a deep breath, steadied my trembling hand, and answered. "Hello. Am I speaking with my name?" A stern, authoritative voice asked. "Yes, this is she. This is Dean Marcus Vance, head of admissions at university name. I have with me Dr. Eleanor Hayes, the chair of the Academic Integrity Board. We are calling regarding the extensive portfolio you sent us a few weeks ago." "Yes, sir," I said, my voice remarkably calm. "I assume you have reviewed the materials." "We have," Dean Vance said, his tone grave. "In my 25 years of higher education administration, I have never seen a more brazen, deeply offensive, and thoroughly documented case of academic fraud. We ran a full forensic check on your cousin's submitted application. The essay she submitted is a word-for-word identical copy of the document you provided, down to the punctuation. Combined with your medical records and the surgeon's affidavit, the situation is completely undeniable." "I see," I replied. "I want to personally apologize to you," the dean continued, his voice softening slightly. "Our holistic review process relies heavily on the honor system regarding personal statements. We were deeply moved by that essay. We believed we were admitting a student of extraordinary resilience. We were utterly horrified to discover the truth of its provenance and the trauma that was co-opted." "What is the university's course of action?" I asked. "As we speak," Dr. Hayes chimed in, "campus security has discreetly approached your cousin in the main auditorium. She is currently being escorted out of the orientation ceremony and brought to my office. She is being immediately, permanently expelled for gross violations of our academic integrity code. Her acceptance is revoked, her tuition deposit is forfeited, and a permanent mark of academic fraud will be placed on her record, which will be visible to any other institution she attempts to apply to through the Common App Clearinghouse." A savage, primal wave of satisfaction rolled through my chest. I closed my eyes, picturing it. Chloe, sitting in the third row, surrounded by her new peers, suddenly tapped on the shoulder by uniformed security. The confusion, the walk of shame up the aisle. The realization dawning on her as she was marched into a sterile office to face the consequences of her actions. Furthermore, Dean Vance spoke up again. "We had placed you on the waitlist because while your academic profile was flawless, we felt your application lacked a certain personal vulnerability. We now realize why. Because the essay you submitted to us, a backup essay about your debate team experiences, while well-written, was not your true story. Your true story was stolen from you." My breath caught in my throat. "The admissions committee convened an emergency meeting yesterday after concluding our investigation," Dean Vance said. "We have a spot open in the incoming freshman class, the spot that was fraudulently occupied. We would like to formally offer that spot to the rightful author of that essay. If you can pack your bags and be on campus by tomorrow, you are admitted. And given the extraordinary circumstances and the profound injustice you've faced, the university is stepping in to offer you a full-ride merit scholarship, covering tuition, room, and board for all 4 years. Tears, hot and fast, finally spilled over my eyelashes. Yes, I choked out. Yes, I accept. I'll be there tomorrow. We look forward to welcoming you, my name. The right way this time. I hung up the phone. The silence in my room was deafening, but it felt victorious. I didn't even have time to start packing before the absolute nuclear fallout began. 15 minutes later, my mom's phone started ringing downstairs. Then my dad's phone. Then the house phone. It was an apocalyptic symphony of ringing. I walked out of my room and stood at the top of the stairs, looking down into the living room. My mother had answered her cell phone. Susan, calm down, I can't understand you. What do you mean she was arrested? Escorted out? What? Fraud. Susan, you're not making any sense. My dad was on the landline, looking pale. Greg, slow down. What do you mean her acceptance was revoked? Expelled? It's her first day. I slowly walked down the stairs. My parents looked up at me, panic in their eyes. Mom, Dad, hang up, I said quietly, but with a tone of authority they had never heard from me before. They stared at me, dumbfounded, but slowly lowered their phones. The tinny, hysterical shrieking of Aunt Susan could still be heard echoing from my mother's receiver. I can explain exactly what happened, I said, walking into the kitchen and pouring myself a glass of water. Chloe didn't write her admissions essay, she stole mine. Over the next 20 minutes, I laid it all out. I told them about the Thanksgiving theft. I showed them the IP logs on my laptop. I showed them the copy of the medical binder I had sent to the dean. I told them about the phone call I had just received. My parents sat at the kitchen island, absolutely paralyzed in stunned silence. The reality of what their niece had done, and what I had meticulously engineered in response, washed over them. She stole your cancer story, my mother whispered, her hand covering her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. She used your surgery to get into college. Yes, I said, and her parents paraded her around for months, mocking me for not being good enough. So I took it back. You got her expelled, my dad said, his voice a mixture of shock and, to my surprise, a deep, grim respect. I didn't get her expelled, Dad, I corrected him. Her own actions got her expelled. I just provided the receipts. Oh, and by the way, I need to borrow the car. I need to go buy some dorm supplies. I'm moving to campus tomorrow. Full ride. The aftermath within the family was catastrophic and, frankly, glorious. Aunt Susan and Uncle Greg drove up to the university in a blind rage, threatening to sue the school, sue the dean, and sue me. The university's legal department basically laughed them out of the building, presenting them with the ironclad binder of evidence I had provided. When Susan realized she had absolutely no legal leg to stand on, and that her daughter's academic future was essentially incinerated, she directed her venom at my parents. She called my mother a monster for raising a vindictive sociopath. My mother, who had spent her entire life shrinking away from her overbearing sister, finally snapped. She told Susan that if she ever spoke to our family again, or ever came near me, she would personally take the story to the local news and ensure every single person in their country club knew exactly what Chloe had done. We haven't spoken to them since. I packed my bags that night. The next morning, my parents drove me to the university. As we pulled onto the beautiful, sprawling, ivy-covered campus, the crisp late summer air felt cleaner than it had in months. I walked into the admissions office, where Dean Vance was waiting for me. He shook my hand, handed me my student ID, and welcomed me to the university. I am now halfway through my first semester. I'm pre-med, hoping to eventually become a pediatric orthopedic surgeon, just like Dr. Thorne. The classes are brutally hard, the late nights are exhausting, and the pressure is intense. But every time I feel overwhelmed, I reach down and touch the long, jagged scar on my right leg. It's a reminder of what I survived when I was 10, and it's a reminder of what I survived at 18. I earned my place here, in blood, in titanium, and in absolute, undeniable truth. And no one will ever steal my story again.